Comparing your home phone options is a good idea, especially when you can choose between RevVoice Home Phone and BTC's home phone service. With RevVoice, you get more than 20 free calling features, unlimited local calls, and unlimited calls to any RevVoice customer anywhere. All this for just $9.99 a month. And now, we're proud to introduce our Bahamaland Unlimited Nationwide Calling Plan. You can call any phone on any island at any time for just $5 a month. BTC charges $16.25 for their bare bones home phone service. Plus, you would spend $9 to get the 3 most popular calling features, and another $33 to get some of the other calling features RevVoice gives you for free. When you add it all up, it's pretty clear why there really is no other choice. RevVoice gives you more minutes, more coverage, more calling features, and free installation. All of this for less money. And for a limited time, you can get RevVoice installed in your house for free and save over $200 a year. So, if you're choosing a home phone service, choose RevVoice, the better choice.
Did government regain majority control of BTC? Well, the Prime Minister says it's complicated.
Clearly, I have something to announce.
PLP MP Greg Moss blasts his own party in the House of Assembly this morning. The Chief Justice says the government cannot force bail changes.
We will do right to all manner of people after the laws and usages of the Bahamas.
A teenager charged for the first murder in 2014. Plus, Urban Renewal says it will visit every household on New Providence. Those stories and more coming up. I'm Nakia DeVoe, and this is NB12. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Cable 12 Studios. Here are the stories coming out of the NB12 newsroom this evening. Executives from Cable and Wireless Communications will travel to the Bahamas next Tuesday to meet with Prime Minister Perry Christie before his big announcement on the future of BTC. He told NB12 today that he will soon announce whether government was successful in regaining majority control of the company. Vonnie Toot has the details.
Prime Minister Christie will miss a portion of next Tuesday's cabinet meeting to meet with executives of Cable and Wireless Communications. While in opposition, Christie pledged to regain majority control of BTC. He says he plans to come to the Bahamian people with an announcement not long after that meeting.
I have had a formal request to meet with executives of Cable and Wireless on Tuesday next in the Bahamas. They are in the Bahamas for a day, and they wanted to pay a courtesy call. That is Mr. Bentley, the incoming chair, and one of his executives.
During that meeting, Christie says he will settle all of government's arrangements with CWC before he makes an announcement. However, he noted that both sides have already arrived at a final position, which he put to members of his cabinet last week. Christie initially planned to make an announcement regarding BTC before the end of 2013. However, that was postponed following the mass shooting in Fox Hill.
I had intended to present to my cabinet the actual cross the T, dot the I, the actual full position, and that has to be done. So the arrangements will be made on a meeting on Tuesday next. They will be meeting with the chair, Mr. Wilson. They then will meet with me. I will obviously be in cabinet and take a break for that meeting, and thereafter we'll make the announcement.
We asked the Prime Minister today, was his government successful in taking back 2% of BTC shares? His response, it's a bit more complicated than that.
Clearly, I have something to announce because it is not as straightforward as that. I think I would want to be able to explain and have with me the negotiating committee so we can explain the entire agreement that we have arrived at. And it is even more significant than just BTC shares.
Last month, opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis again expressed doubt in Christie's ability to take back the majority shares of BTC and called on him to abandon those efforts. However, Christie says he looks forward to proving naysayers wrong.
Firstly, that I couldn't do it. Secondly, I was wasting my time. So all of that now will be answered, and we will be able to show the Bahamian people exactly what it is we arrived at.
Christie says he will only make an announcement on Tuesday if CWC officials are ready for it. CWC purchased 51% of BTC shares in April 2011 amid widespread controversy. Shortly after coming to office in May 2012, the Christie administration appointed a negotiating team to begin take-back talks. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonique Tood.
Marco City Member of Parliament Gregory Moss spent 13 minutes blasting his own party in the House of Assembly today, saying he is sick of playing politics. Rather, he says parliamentarians ought to focus on crime and some of the other pressing issues facing the country. Christina McNeil has more in this report.
I'm tired of sitting here and talking about nonsense, absolute nonsense, when serious issues remain to be discussed.
Marco City Member of Parliament Gregory Moss holding government's feet to the fire on the floor of the House of Assembly today, calling for action on major issues including crime, value-added tax, and gaming in the Bahamas. Moss says he refuses to waste another year in the House as frivolous debates rage on. Moss disturbed by what he called a lack of outrage over the 2013 murder count and the mass shooting on Fox Hill Park that left 4 people dead late last year.
And I don't sense the outrage that I think we should have in this House. You know, I'm not here to play politics with this. I am sick of playing politics. I'm absolutely sick of playing politics. I saw the people at this front bench sit in this House for 5 years and watch the crime numbers mount and did nothing about it. And right now we are sitting in a crisis, an absolute crisis. And what must happen, Mr. Speaker? Must the crisis come to our doorsteps before we take this crisis seriously? Must it? Must it really? At the end of the day, this polite approach we're taking to law enforcement, where we are blaming the police or blaming the courts and failing to blame ourselves for passing the proper laws and putting in place the prescriptions that need to be put in place to avoid all of these delays, to avoid all of these excuses, and to deal definitively with crime, stops here.
But that wasn't the only issue Moss hit out on. He called on the PLP to fulfill its promise to bring equality of taxation and relief to the Bahamian people.
Bring the VAT debate to this House, and let's talk about that. I've made it very clear I'm going to vote against it. I'm not going to absent myself from the House. I'm going to stand here and vote against it because it's a bad law in the way it's presently framed. Bring the gaming debate to the House, because there cannot be any way that we will justify discrimination against Bahamians in this day and age. Bring the debate these guys don't want, the debate on income tax that the FNM doesn't want because it goes against their constituents. Bring it to this House, and let's now talk about equality and equity in the way we treat our people.
Moss also noting that the country's large number of undocumented migrants is a problem only the PLP can solve, as he insisted that they just get on with it. Now, the Prime Minister was not in the chamber of the House of Assembly when Moss made those statements. However, he took the time to speak with reporters when the House went on lunch break. The Prime Minister saying that each MP is entitled to an opinion. Christie noting that crime is already a top priority of the country and that the legislation debated today was not nonsense, but something that would move the country forward.
If the Member of Parliament has an issue and he is a member of a political party, as is the case of Greg Moss, he has the opportunity to ventilate and to speak however strongly he would wish to speak within the annals of the parliamentary group. Notwithstanding all of that, he has the right to stand and make whatever speech he'd like to make. And he obviously is elected to do that, to look at that legislation and speak in any way about that as not being incredibly useful to the future of this country and planning is not to understand it. all right? And there is nothing more fundamental than commenting on something and appearing not to understand it.
Moss made it clear that we will be hearing more from him, particularly on the issue of how his name was allegedly tarnished in the House of Assembly during debates surrounding the National Insurance Board. Reporting from the House of Assembly for NB12, I'm Christina McNeil.
Well, we've got more from the House of Assembly later on in the newscast, but first, Chief Justice Sir Michael Barnett hits back at criticisms leveled at the judiciary over the number of accused people who are out on bail, following the Prime Minister's statement that the government is prepared to restrict the ability of judges to grant bail. Sir Michael said this morning that the courts are aware of the country's crime situation, and judges are also aware of the conditions required for bail to be granted. Dana Smith reports.
He said judges do not arbitrarily set bail, it's a constitutional right, and he outlined the criteria necessary for bail to be granted. He added the court should not be undermined by certain remarks.
Justices do not live in ivory towers. We read the newspapers and are equally appalled at the events in Fox Hill, as well as other areas of New Providence. We are painfully aware that the outcome could have been much worse. We are aware that some persons, whilst on bail, commit serious offenses and intimidate witnesses for the prosecution. We do not condone or sympathize with criminal behavior, and we recognize that dangerous persons must be kept off the streets. Yes, the safety of the people is the highest law. Cicero. We at the same time take seriously our judicial oath that we will do right to all manner of people after the laws and usages of the Bahamas, without fear, favor, affection, or ill will.
Sir Michael was speaking at the opening of the legal year ceremony at the Supreme Court, addressing a room full of lawyers and government officials from both the Bahamas and the United States. No doubt taking note of the Prime Minister's pledge that the government is prepared to introduce legislation to restrict judges' ability to grant bail for those charged with violent crimes or gun charges. Sir Michael said persons should be aware the 7 judges who adjudicate on bail applications are obliged to follow certain principles.
I am aware of the criticism that judges have received on their decisions to grant or refuse bail. We are aware that the suggestion has been made at the highest levels to further curtail the discretion of justices to grant bail. This is healthy criticism. We are not immune from criticism. But I believe it is important to remind persons of the principles relating to bail and to the fact that justices do not capriciously or arbitrarily grant bail without regard to these principles.
These principles, the Chief Justice said, have been surmised most recently by the Jamaican Court of Appeal in a 2011 decision. He quoted at length relevant sections of that decision, including parts which stated that arrested or detained people have a right to the presumption of innocence. Another which said if suspects are not put on trial within a reasonable amount of time, they have a right to be released on bail. And yet another that said the granting of bail is balanced with the interests of the state, meaning if the accused is reasonably suspected to frustrate the process of justice or commit other crimes. But ultimately, Sir Michael explained the question of bail falls under the discretion of the courts. He quoted sections which spoke to the importance of having an independent judiciary, quote, free from interference from the legislature.
Any legislative action that diminishes the independence of the judiciary or impedes the judiciary in its function of safeguarding the constitutional rights of the individual will be struck down unless such legislation is enacted in accordance with the rules for constitutional amendments. It is with these well-established principles in mind that judges are obliged to approach any application for bail.
Sir Michael reminded that in addition to following these set principles, when bail is granted, judges impose certain conditions, such as curfew and limiting the movement of the accused out on bail. And if the accused violates any of the conditions, bail will be revoked. As the country seeks to find solutions to this vexing problem of crime, it cannot compromise the rule of law. He essentially reminded that judges know how to do their jobs.
The judges and magistrates will resist emphatically any attempt to curtail our ability to give effect to the rights guaranteed by our Constitution. Where there is a reasonable apprehension that a particular individual is likely to interfere with the course of justice, interfere with witnesses, or commit a crime whilst on bail, then justices will undoubtedly act on that information, properly presented to the court.
Also taking note of the government's promise to increase the number of courts, Sir Michael said although that is laudable and welcomed, the actual deployment of judicial resources is a matter exclusively within the province of the Chief Justice and the judiciary.
I urge members of the executive that in their language, they do not appear to be dictating to the courts how they ought to be run. Whilst I am satisfied that this is not their intent, it is imperative that they do not undermine public confidence in the judiciary by language and statements that leave this impression. The fight to protect the community from the scourge of crime is a collective effort. We must work together, the police, the Crown, the Defense Council, the public, as well as the courts.
Reporting for MB12, I'm Dana Smith.
And speaking of bail, a man out on bail was today charged for the country's first murder for the year. 19-year-old Vernal Brown of Mason's Addition, in the green shirt and camouflage pants, is accused of the New Year's Day murder of Theon Ellis. Ellis was shot to death around 2 New Year's Day morning. Police say he was sitting on a vehicle when a man armed with a handgun approached him and shot him several times before fleeing on foot. Magistrate Andrew Forbes remanded Brown to Her Majesty's prison until his next court appearance on January 14th. After hearing other matters, Magistrate Forbes called Brown back to the bench and asked, quote, "Weren't you before my court last month?" Now, Brown confirmed that he was arraigned for possession on December 31st. The judge indicated that Brown was out on bail for that matter during the time of his alleged crime. Also appearing before Magistrate Forbes this afternoon was 20-year-old Karen Cawley of Australia Avenue. He's in the red and blue shirt. Cawley was charged for the attempted murder of Tavon Williams on December 16th. Now, he was not required to enter a plea to that charge. Cawley was remanded to prison until he's back in court also on January 14th.